Good morning and welcome to Error Analysis class, week one or meeting one. So this week we're going to cover the intro to error analysis. And I just want to tell you that this course will introduce like the theory and practices of error analysis in second language acquisition, which is in English, and also to practice your applied linguistics. So you will learn how to identify and then you will learn how to classify and analyze errors to better understand interlanguage development, the implications, and also your linguistic competence. So in this week, by the end of this week, I mean, you will be able to define error analysis. So you have to the understanding of what is error analysis. You can explain the historical background of EA or error analysis, whether in linguistics and in language teaching. You can also understand the importance of studying errors for learners, for English learners, and you can identify examples of learner errors in real context. Okay, so next is what is error analysis? So error analysis is the study of errors made by second or foreign language learners in order to understand how language is learned and processed. Now, error analysis is the study of the errors that we make when learning a new language. So instead of seeing errors as failures, EA or error analysis treats them as important clues about how we are learning and how our brains are processing. So when we make mistakes, they show us how far we've come and what we still need to work on. Okay, so why error analysis is important? Okay, so error analysis help us to discover our learning difficulties. So by looking at our errors, we can see the areas where we usually struggle. For example, like maybe your grammar, your word order, or maybe vocabularies. Okay. For instance, you often say, she don't like coffee. It shows that you need to review again subject verb agreement. Okay, because it's not she don't like coffee, but she doesn't like coffee. So we need to discover where is your difficulty. The second is to understand our own interlanguage. So interlanguage is the personal system of rules we create while learning English. So it's a mix of our first language rules, English rules, and new trial and error strategies. Okay, for example, like saying I am agree means we are still figuring out how agree works in English compared to our first language. The third is to help improve our learning. So when we, okay, as students, when we know what errors we usually make, we can focus on what we really need. Okay. And then to help us improve by um, learning through textbooks and exercises and maybe feedback that can be designed to help us fix our common problems. For example, like um, many of us confuse like borrow and lend, okay? And then practices can give us more clues on that point, where to actually use the kind of the terminologies on what occasions, on what kind of sentences. Okay, so why we should really care about this? Because errors are a natural part of learning. So it's not something that you are ashamed of, especially when English is not your first language. So you're actually learning about something new. And each of the errors show our progress and gives us chance to improve. And then by paying attention to our errors, we can become more independent learners and better users of English. Next, in 1950s to 1960s, we call this the era of contrastive analysis or CA. So the assumption was most errors come from the interference of the mother tongue or L1 or language 1. So researchers, they believed second language errors mostly happened because learners were still influenced by the first language or L1. Okay, for Indonesian learners of English, this meant many errors were explained as an interference from Bahasa Indonesia or L1 here. Okay, so the focus here is comparing L1 and L2 to predict the errors or to predict difficulties. And for example, like in Indonesian, when we say dia guru, okay, you translate you seldom translate it as she or he teacher, but here is when we use contrastive analysis, you you simply cannot translate it as that because you have to you have to predict the errors, okay, the errors based on the overgeneralization of English rules or grammar itself. And the weaknesses of contrastive analysis that many predicted errors are never occurred and many actual errors were not predicted. So these are the weaknesses because the errors that we make, okay, can be explained by L1 because those errors actually come from, how we overgeneralization of the rules itself. In 1967, this is a Corder's breakthrough. So if you don't know who is Corder, so Corder is a linguist, um, was a linguist, sorry. So his full name was Stephen Corder, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a linguist who very significantly influenced the field of applied linguistics and second language error analysis in the late 20th century. So he introduced a very systematic way to analyze errors made by second language learners. So in his article, The Significance of Learners' Errors, which I will send it to you. So he mentioned that errors are not bad habits, okay, but it's the evidence of learning. So errors, they're very valuable, okay? So they show you and us, everyone, that whatever mistakes that you have is for you to relearn from it. So errors shows the learner's progress. So your progress. So where it shows where you as a learner in your stage of your development. Okay. And then the second is that you as a learner, when you encounter errors or done some kind of a mistake or errors, it's your strategies later to actually to encounter um, any difficulties, and you will also build your own strategies in learning a new language. Okay, so it's how you will later learn to build your own rules in language acquisitions. The third is errors shows that um sorry it's it shows for us as a teacher to and you as a student to also know on what is to be focused on. Okay, for example, like uh you have encountered many errors in prefixes, for example, then you need to have more attention on learning on those prefixes. Okay, so instead of only focusing on avoiding errors, okay, you should study them, okay, as a window uh, to open up more chances of not repeating those errors again. In 1970s onwards, error analysis was recognized and as a field of study or a branch of applied linguistics. And EA became a very well established area of applied linguistics, and researchers from then they started collecting real learners data from essays. They collected um, writing a lot of essays, and then do a lot of recordings and also tests to systematically analyze error patterns from students. And this also linked to the rise of interlanguage theory. This is from Slinker in 1972. So Larry Slinker was an American linguist who introduced the concept of interlanguage. So it's a transitional language system used by second language learners, and the related phenomenon of fossilization, where a learner's linguistic system stops developing before achieving full native like proficiency. Okay. So the idea of this is that learners they create their own language system, and this is called interlanguage. Okay, it is between L1 and L2. It's not random, but it's systematic. So errors are natural because learners are testing the rules and building these temporary systems. For instance, like Indonesian um, interlanguage, uh, they make a sentence as, like, for example, saya tidak ke sekolah, and then they know that in this case, in English, you can write it as a past tense. So they formulate the sentence as she didn't went to school. So the learner now has learned the patterns and the systematic of the interlanguage theory. Therefore, they have already known the rules and they make the rules, and because they have learned from it and they have also maybe tested, and they, as I said, they built their temporary system to learn both language. So because they have the idea that, oh, this is a past tense, they already know, and therefore they translate it as she didn't went to school. So they combine both as a double past tense. The person already know that because this is a past tense, we have to mark it with D. Okay, and then the learner already knows that the past tense also required to have it from uh, go becomes went. So in the past, errors were seen as something to avoid. Okay, but today errors are seen as something to learn for. For Indonesian learning, for Indonesian learners of English, your errors are not failures, okay? They are evidence that your brain is working to build English step by step. And then you will have your own system. You will regulate in overall how to formulate a better understanding of English, okay? So why is error analysis important? The first one is error analysis improves your academic English skills, duh, okay? Because you as a university student, you really need English, okay? Especially you are English department students. You need English for academic writing, okay? For presentations and also for research papers and so on, etc. And then by analyzing your own errors, for example, like grammar, word choice, referencing, you can identify recurring problems and actively work on them. Okay? And the second is to develop linguistic awareness. So, in linguistics, students study language structures, system, and usage, right? EA provides hands-on practice in analyzing real data. So it's not just abstract theories. So EA, um, through linguistics awareness, it sharpens your skills in many linguistics aspects such as phonology, syntax, morphology, and pragmatics because students must classify and explain why errors occurs. The third is error analysis is important because it prepares for research and projects. So in many university courses, especially in linguistics and applied linguistics, or maybe TESOL, teaching English as a second language, require many research programs, right? And EA gives students a practical methodology for collecting learner data, categorizing errors, and interpreting findings. The fourth is EA builds critical thinking. Yes, EA is not only about spotting what's wrong, but you must also ask yourself, why did this error happen? Okay, is it because of the interference? Is it because of overgeneralization? Okay, and what does it reveal about interlanguage development? So you always ask yourself about the errors that you make. Okay, this trains analytical thinking, which is central in linguistics and any academic field. The fifth is supports your future careers. Many English or language majors become teachers, translators, editors, or researchers, and EA equips them with skills to diagnose learners' difficulties, improve accuracy in language use, such as in translators or writers, and conduct applied research, such as for linguists, okay, people who study about language. The sixth is encourages lifelong learning and self-monitoring. By practicing error analysis on their own in writing, speaking, etc., students learn how to become independent learners. So they develop the ability to notice and correct their own errors, which is a skill essential for both academic success and for professional communication. So for university students learning English and linguistics, error analysis, error analysis is not just about grammar correction, but it's about understanding how languages are learned, becoming more accurate and confident users of English, and gaining tools for linguistic analysis and research, and preparing for careers where language expertise matter. Here are the examples of errors. She go to school every day. So this can be categorized as verb agreement errors because it's supposed to be she goes to school every day because this is a third person singular. Therefore, we must use um, the exact verb to agree with the subject. Okay. He didn't went to the market. This is overgeneralization of past tense, where we know that this supposed to be a past tense sentence, but we overgeneralize the sentence. We change this here, and then we also change it here again. Okay, this is a class activities which I was supposed to give it to you in the class, but because we uh, did not have a first class in the classroom, therefore you can practice this by yourself. Now here is uh, I'll say I'll say it as a game, not a quiz, but this is a game for you to play at your own time, and you can repeat it if you failed or you have score lower than 100. If you have difficulties in accessing this one, or if you are not familiar with accessing Educate Play, I'll send you a separate video to as a tutorial to access this one. Okay, so please practice by yourself. Your take-home assignment is for you to read and just, I think it was one page only from a quarter's book, The Significance of Learners' Errors. So you just have to read it. It has been uploaded on my G Drive, so just download it and read it. And then your task is to write, not typed, write, not typed with a D, sorry, a one-page reflection. So your one-page reflection must answer the question, why does Quarter argue that errors are significant? And how do you personally feel about making errors when learning a language? Okay, and submit it next week. All right, so thank you for paying attention to this class, and um, I hope that you will not have any difficulties. But if you do have, please let me know. And if you have any questions, also let me know. Thanks and have a good day.